opportunity to comment this afternoon. My name is Janet Kotra. I'm a scientist, a retired regulator, and a founding member, and former chairman of an international forum on stakeholder confidence. During my 28.5 years that I worked here at NRC, I counted among my responsibilities nearly 14 years as project manager supporting the waste confidence policy. I'll be submitting formal written comments before the end of the close of the comment period, but this afternoon I want to confine my remarks to 3 points. First, I object to the way this commission defines waste confidence in discussion section 3, answer A2 in the September 13 Waste Confidence Federal Register Notice, and on the Waste Confidence website that the commission maintains today. The current commission mischaracterizes waste confidence by defining it solely as a storage issue. From its inception, waste confidence has been and continues to be about confidence in the eventuality of deep geologic disposal. And yes, it is also secondarily about safety and availability of storage until off-site disposal or storage comes online. Second, in its analysis, the Commission projects that based on international experience, 25 to 30 years is a reasonable estimate using a consent-based process as recommended by the President's Blue Ribbon Commission. I believe the NRC the 25 years to 30 years is a reasonable estimate to cite, characterize, construct, license, and open a geologic repository using a consent-based process, as recommended by that Blue Ribbon Commission. I believe the NRC fails to consider key factors in its analysis, factors that are peculiar to the United States. These factors may render NRC's projected time frame overly optimistic. Lastly, while I agree that today there exists a much stronger technical basis for confidence in geologic disposal, the current rulemaking fails to take into account whether there exists sufficient social and political bases for continued confidence that such disposal will be realized in the United States, and what these inadequacies portend or imply for the rulemaking. For myself and for many members of the lay public, the waste confidence decision and rule touch on a most basic question. How can the Commission continue to allow generation of spent nuclear fuel or permit operation of new generators unless it is confident that there will be permanent disposal of that waste? Contrary to how it is defined in the current regulatory notice, the original Federal Register notice announcing the first waste confidence decision in 1984, the Commission stated, and I quote, "The purpose of this proceeding is solely to assess the degree of assurance now available that radioactive waste can be safely disposed of." Unfortunately, today's rulemaking, it went on to say other things, but it said up front that waste confidence was about the availability of disposal. Unfortunately, today's rulemaking in effect fails to answer this most important question by stating in effect, we have confidence in disposal because we have confidence in the safety of long-term storage. I'm sorry. No matter how well technically justified that may be, this logic simply breaks down. NRC is dodging the question the public most cares about when it says disposal will become available when necessary. Deep geologic disposal is and remains our nation's policy codified in U.S. law. The public deserves an answer to the question, is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission confident the United States will implement a disposal solution for spent nuclear fuel in a reasonable and realistic time frame? As to my second point, if a community in the United States is to step forward and to consent to host a repository, or even for that matter, a centralized interim storage facility, such a community must trust in the integrity of political and regulatory systems with which it is to consent. Members of such a community are effectively entering into a contract on behalf of the safety of their citizens, and especially, in the case of a repository, the safety of their future generations. The Nuclear Waste Policy Act that led to selecting Upper Mountain is such a statutory framework, enacted by Congress, which set forth a process for developing not one, but 2 repositories. This process was to be implemented by the executive branch and licensed and overseen by an independent Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Any prospective host community today will have to confront the sober reality that the U.S. government failed to implement its own nuclear waste law. Absent an executive branch willing to carry out a nuclear waste law enacted by Congress and overseen by a safety regulator perceived as truly independent by that host community, how can any community have confidence going forward that this or any other nuclear waste law will in fact be honored or implemented? I have to say that in reading this proposed rule, no attempt has been made in this proposal to address the impact of this breakdown in the U.S. public's ability to rely on its government and on NRC itself to comply with the nation's own nuclear waste laws, especially in light of the recent ruling of the U.S. Court of Appeals District of Columbia Circuit. Finally, to my third point, after all that has happened since 1999, should NRC still have confidence in waste disposal? Since 1984, the Commission has expressed and later affirmed its confidence that deep geologic disposal is feasible. Nothing has emerged to lessen NRC's confidence in the technical feasibility of repository disposal. That much is not in dispute. As this rulemaking notes, much more scientific and engineering experience and evidence has emerged to reinforce the Commission's initial findings. And I have to add that a lot of the confidence has been contributed to quite ably by NRC scientists and engineers and their colleagues at the Center for Nuclear Waste Regulatory Analysis in San Antonio. Also among the reasons for greater confidence are the findings and recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission for America's Nuclear Future, which endorsed disposal in deep geologic repositories when selected using a consent-based process. It is important to recall, however, that the Commission also founded its confidence both in 1984 and again in 1990 on confidence in the existence of a statutory framework enacted by a bipartisan Congress setting forth a process for a path forwards for the development of repositories. At no time did the respective commissions involved contemplate that the process itself laid out in statute would become corrupted and unworkable.
Janet, can I just ask you to
I'm getting to the end. I'm very close. Nor did those commissions anticipate that subsequent commissioners would later be unable or unwilling to carry out their statutory obligations. Yet, as documented in the recent ruling of the second highest court in the land, this is precisely what has happened. The Commission must therefore, as a result, declare that there no longer exists a basis for waste confidence. Such a bold declaration would not only be honest, it would address forthrightly the fundamental question undergirding the original purpose of the waste confidence policy. Recognizing the lack of waste confidence would generate significant attention from both pro and anti-nuclear interests and provide NRC an opportunity to submit a substantive legislative proposal to the U.S. Congress to suggest amendments to existing legislation to amend or replace the Nuclear Waste Policy Act. I respectfully and earnestly urge the Commission to give this serious consideration. Thank you once again for the privilege of being able to comment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Kevin Camps from Beyond Nuclear. I serve as radioactive waste specialist, and Beyond Nuclear is a national watchdog environmental group on the nuclear power industry. The National Environmental Policy Act requires consideration of all reasonably foreseeable environmental impacts of a proposed action from cradle to grave. The question that must be answered in a reactor licensing decision is, if you look all the way to the end of the reactor's life, including decommissioning, spent nuclear fuel or irradiated nuclear fuel storage and disposal, is having that source of electricity, nuclear power, worth all the environmental costs, risks, and impacts that will then inevitably ensue? As soon as NRC licenses a reactor, the generation or creation of spent nuclear fuel, irradiated nuclear fuel, and all its related costs, risks, and impacts will then follow. The NRC effectively assumes licensing and then goes on from there to look at the impacts of irradiated nuclear fuel storage, although it does a very poor, woefully inadequate, and in my opinion, legally insufficient and violative job of doing that. But the whole point of the environmental impact statement is to allow an informed decision regarding whether to license the reactor in the first place. That is, to allow the creation of irradiated nuclear fuel. NRC does not even attempt to answer that question in this environmental impact statement. What are the costs and risks and impacts of storing irradiated nuclear fuel for any period of time? alone forevermore. Is having a new or extended reactor operating license worth the costs, risks, and impacts of storing high-level radioactive waste forever into the future? The answer to that question is no. Have these costs, risks, and impacts been mitigated? The answer to that is no. This generic environmental impact statement is completely devoid of this issue, which makes a mockery of the National Environmental Policy Act, as well as the court ruling on New York versus NRC. The mountain of commercial radioactive waste in the United States is now 56 years high, and we don't even know what to do with the first cupful. Obviously, the only real answer to the high-level radioactive waste problem is to stop making it. For the 70,000 metric tons of commercial high-level radioactive waste that already exist in the United States, for well over a decade, a coalition of hundreds of environmental groups representing all 50 states have called upon the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to implement hardened on-site storage as a regulatory mandate. To empty the vulnerable pools, which are at risk of leaks and fires due to accident or attack or simple age degradation, into hardened dry cask storage that is designed and built well, designed to last for not decades but centuries without leaking into the environment, designed to withstand terrorist attacks, and designed with safeguards against accidents. Such basic safeguards as radiation monitors, heat monitors, and pressure monitors, which are not currently required. Regarding pool leaks, there's a long list of pool leaks that have already occurred. At Dresden, Unit 1, due to a broken pipe. At Hatch in Georgia. At BWX Technologies in Lynchburg, Virginia. At Indian Point 1 and 2 on the banks of the Hudson River upstream of New York City. At Salem, Unit 1 in New Jersey. At Connecticut Yankee. All NRC licensees. There's also been a pool leak at a Department of Energy pool, the high flux beam reactor at Brookhaven National Lab on Long Island. In terms of the risks of pool fires, Fukushima Daiichi Unit Number 4 is the most obvious example of the potentially catastrophic risks of pool fires if that building were to collapse, lose its cooling water supply, and catch fire. The magnitude would be an order of magnitude or greater than what we've already seen in terms of radioactivity releases at Fukushima Daiichi. And I'll close on that point that I agree with NRC Chairwoman Allison McFarland when she wrote, along with a team of authors in 2003, that the risks of pool fires at commercial nuclear power plants in the United States are so great that expedited transfer into hardened on-site storage dry casks is a very important national security